What's up, Internet? You're tuning into another episode of the Steam Deck Podcast, Flip Screen Games weekly podcast, all about Valve's hot new handheld, the Steam Deck. I'm your host, Pete and Bessie, joined as always by my very good friends and co hosts, Mr. Stephen Radford
Hello, hello.
and Mr. Max Wright.
Ahoy, ahoy.
Welcome back to the show, Steve. It's good to have you back.
It's good to be back. I missed a packed week last week. What a week for me to not feel well and have to skip out. But yeah, I'm glad to be back and talk all about Steam Deck.
Yeah, I mean, it's only the second time this week that you get to co opt an entire show to talk about Diablo 4, so you got to be having a pretty good week.
Not an entire show. We will be talking about Diablo 4, and but if you want to hear about like the game in general and thoughts on the game, then go check out this week's Flip Screen Games podcast. But I do want to talk a little bit about Diablo 4 on Steam Deck and how it plays.
Well, yeah, let's start things there. Like you said, we got some more to talk about later on, but that's where we're kicking things off. So give me the rundown. Like how easy is it to get it up and running? Because obviously, I know with the BattleNet stuff, there's usually a couple extra hoops. How's the performance? What frame rate are you getting on it? Give us the rundown.
So it's extremely easy to get set up now. When it first dropped the last week, it wasn't so easy. There was a bug in Wine and Proton, depending on what you're using, where an issue would pop up and it would say no GPU found when you tried to launch Diablo 4. That got corrected in a custom build of Proton GE and Wine GE that you can download. If you want to install it all manually, you can get it from Proton Up QT. My recommendation, though, would be install Diablo 4 through Lutris. If you're planning on playing this weekend in the open beta, which you absolutely should because it's a phenomenal game, download Lutris, search for Diablo 4, and just click install. It'll walk you through the process of installing Battle.net. Once that's installed, it will install the custom version of Wine. It will configure the DXVK, correct version of that. And it will all be set up ready for you to just go into battle.net, log in with your battle.net account, and install Diablo 4. I would recommend install Diablo 4 and uncheck the install the high performance assets, or whatever they call them, the high quality assets, because it's not really necessary. You only really need that if you're playing on like a 4K screen. And I have found that I can get an easy 40 frames per second solidly across the board at medium settings with the built-in FSR 2.0 set to quality. You can probably hit 60 FPS for the majority of times when there's a lot of monsters on screen. It will sometimes drop. I find that 40 FPS is that right balance for me. Drop the refresh rate of the screen down to 40 hertz so it matches up, and turn the in-game VSync on. And it plays really, really well. One thing I did have to do, though, and I recommend pretty much everyone does this, especially if you've got not the low end Steam Deck, but the middle or the high end Steam Deck, is set your UMA frame buffer to 4 gigabytes in the BIOS and install Cryobytes Cryo Utilities 2.0 and go through all of the changes that he recommends. And I'll put a link down in the description for that. I had a bunch of crashes before I did the frame buffer change to 4 gigabytes. Doing that fixed the issue. I didn't realize when I RMA'd my Steam Deck that it came back and that got changed back. So now I've reverted it back to the 4 gigabytes.
Are there any benefits to doing that in other games? Or is it just for Diablo 4?
Most games will receive a benefit for it. That's the amount of memory that is given to the GPU specifically. So it will give it
Okay.
4 gigabytes of memory at all times from the 12 gigabytes. You need to do this in addition to increasing your swap file size,
Yeah.
which is why you install Cryo Utilities. It will enable you to increase the swap file size. If you do one of them and not the other, do the Cryo Utilities but not the frame buffer. But you should really kind of do both of them together.
Okay. Well, I've already done cryo utilities. How would one, just so that people can listen to this podcast and just go away and do it, myself included, how would you go into the BIOS and do that?
So completely shut down your Steam Deck. So go to the power options and then shut down. Once it's turned off, hold down the power up button and click on the volume up button and click power. That'll take you into your BIOS. You're going to want to go to the settings screen, go down to, I believe it's the memory screen, and then within there is the UMA frame buffer. Set that from 1 gigabyte, which is the default, to 4 gigabytes. Once that's done, you can just restart your Steam Deck and the settings have changed. You can confirm that the settings have changed by going into the settings, going to system, and then confirming that the video RAM is set to 4 GB instead of 1 GB.
Okay. Is there anything else you can do in the BIOS that might help with the Steam Deck? I've never been into it myself, or is it just that?
The only other thing that's worth doing in there is if you're dual booting Windows, you
Right.
can set up a custom bootloader. But other than that, really the only thing that's beneficial is upping that UMA frame buffer from 1 GB to 4 GB. You can always set it back if you find that it's causing issues in some games. You can always set it back. But I've found it's improved performance across the board. I went back and played the Resident Evil 4 beta after that. Had it was visually obvious that there was improved performance there as
Okay.
well. I managed to hit 40 frames per second solidly there as well. But yeah, Diablo 4 on Steam Deck runs really, really well. The controls work straight out of the box. I used then Boiler to add it from Lutris to Steam, so it would automatically download all of the artwork and everything for me. I just clicked Add Shortcut, and then I can go to gaming mode and I can just boot into it with no issues whatsoever.
Does it go
Works
straight?
really,
Does
really
it
well.
open Battle.net or does it open Diablo 4 straight away?
It opens Battle.net, unfortunately.
Ah.
Then you have to click play to play Diablo. It will come up with a warning saying GPU unsupported. I would imagine by the time this is launched on in June, that Wine and Proton would have had an update by then to fix
Yeah.
that problem.
Yeah.
So, going through all that and finally getting like you know, a I guess what's the word I'm looking for? Um, Getting a performance that you're satisfied with. Have you decided that Diablo 4 is like going to be, primarily played on Steam Deck for you now? I know originally you were kind of thinking you were going to play it over on Xbox. Um, do you see yourself primarily playing on the deck now?
Yeah, I was going to pick this up on Xbox. I wasn't sure how it was going to perform. And I know Max, when he was installing Overwatch 2, had a bunch of issues getting that working. Seems like Overwatch 2 was the kind of guinea pig, and now Diablo 4 gets to just be installed smooth sailing because
Yeah.
they've
Aren't
sorted
you
out all the
lucky?
problems there.
Aren't you
Um,
lucky?
so, so yeah, Diablo 4 runs absolutely flawlessly. So it's 100% going to be where I play it on the deck. It's the perfect game just to lie down on your couch and just run around attacking some monsters. As I said on the Flip Screen Games podcast this week, it's Diablo, but there's also a bunch of other stuff on there, like events and raids and dungeons and stuff. So if you're not really like doing something that's story centric and watching cutscenes and things like that, you can just have TV on in the background. This becomes the perfect TV game where you're on the sofa. You're just like, you've got something like The Office on that you've seen a million times, and you're just slamming the A button or the right trigger or whatever buttons you've assigned your skills to. And it just is so nice to be able to play Diablo. It's got me I've missed it all week because it was a beta last weekend, and I've got to wait till this weekend, and I
Yeah.
got to wait 3 months for it to come out, and
Is it really that long? Oh
yeah,
gosh, what?
I've got to wait till June, so I'm, like, itching to to play Diablo. I may end up picking up, Diablo 2 and playing that on the Steam Deck again because I played that through on Xbox, but playing that on handheld would be really nice.
Do you see yourself potentially um, getting it on the dock as well and playing on the TV since you were kind of planning on doing that with the Xbox? Or what do you
Yeah, I
think?
think I could, and because it supports FSR 2.0, I actually might try that this weekend and report back next week because it's the first game I've played that supports FSR 2.0. So I'd be interested to see how that upscaling works from something, but it was playing at 40 FPS in 720. I would imagine I'll easily be able to get 30 FPS at 1080p. The only problem I've got with the docked experience is my TV supports VRR. I wish I could set the frame rate to be 40 that it's outputting,
Yeah.
but it's not an option on when it's on the TV because it detects that it's a 120 hertz screen, so I can only move the slider down to 60. There is something we'll talk about later that I'm going to try that may solve that problem, but that's at the end of the show.
I forgot to mention, I actually recently picked up a dock from a friend
Oh, really?
that I was supposed to have for the podcast. I could go da and then forgot to go to the post office and get it. So I have a
Well,
dock
I'd be
now.
interested to know what you think about it because I think even if you play mostly on PC, being able to just like plug it in and using it as a Steam Link is really nice use case for it.
Yeah, I'll definitely give it a go. I've already got like a solution, but it's not great, and I'd rather use something that is has more dongle slots and stuff like that.
Sure. Yeah.
Um, so yeah,
Yeah, I'm excited to hear more about like your time with it because, like Steve said, like knowing that you're kind of already primarily a PC guy, I'm interested to see how much use you get out of it and how worth it you think it is for somebody in your specific use case. Since I think Steve and I both had kind of different expectations for it, but I think it kind of speaks to our relationship with the PC platform
yeah,
primarily being through Steam Deck.
I think it's going to be great for emulation.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah, it really
absolutely.
is.
It's
But
Yeah.
we'll
I
see.
I I think that's honestly probably its biggest draw, in my opinion, is like, being able to use it if you wanna, like, play, some Melee or you wanna go, play like an old Tony Hawk or something like that. All
Or I think
things that
those
I have done
smaller
on the
games.
Steam Deck docking station.
Because if yeah, well, I think those smaller games, they're like indie titles that aren't really like the performance of the deck isn't really harpering the experience. Because the issue I've got is if I'm playing these games at 40 FPS, they look great on the deck where I've set the screen refresh rate to 40 hertz. I plug them into a TV, I kind of have to reduce that down to 30 FPS. And
Mhm.
that's when the experience for me is just like, oh, it's not quite as smooth as I would like it to be. Whereas something like playing a Vampire Survivors or a Cult of the Lamb or anything like that, being able to plug that into your TV just to continue the experience, like maybe the battery's running low or something, you just want to plug it in and carry on, or you want to play something that's couch co-op. Because even emulating, like I've emulated some Mario Party and been able to connect two controllers and play that. And like some of those older GameCube Mario Party games are the ones that I'm really nostalgic for. And being able to do that docked on the TV is really nice.
Yeah. It's nice for experiences too that, like, are nice to play in handheld, but that, um, aren't necessarily good TV games. Like, we've been playing, Persona 5 Royal for the game club. By the way, keep your eyes peeled, episode 2 is finally dropping next week, get ready. Um and that's a game where I really like having the ability to play it in handheld and like play it in bed or something like that at the end of the day. But when I am playing it, I'm not playing it with something on in the background for the most part because there's dialogue and there's cutscenes and like there's music I want to hear. And, so for stuff like that, it is nice to have the option to dock it. And even though I'm playing it at a slightly lower resolution than I would if I was playing it natively on one of my consoles, it does hit 60 FPS, so it feels smooth and it's not a super graphic intensive game
I
anyway,
think the
right?
style of that game really lends itself to just being scaled up, though. It's not like, oh, I need to see every kind of little detail. Diablo
Mm-mm.
probably will be the same because it's an isometric game and I'm looking at it top down.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I'll give it a go tomorrow when the beta's back open, and I'll report back next week. And maybe if you two are going to play, I don't know. You've both said you've got a busy weekend, but I was
Yeah,
hoping to
I
try
don't know
teaming
how
up
much
with
time I'm
you
gonna
two.
get
I'll try and
this
install it,
weekend,
and
but
I'll see. I'll see what I
I'll,
can do. I'll keep you updated.
I'll say this, Steve. I will commit to launch weekend. I will give you like let's play it for 6 hours, like or whatever together, right? Like
Okay.
I'm down to
I'll commit to June
yeah, let's do it.
if
All
I
right,
buy it. Sorry, if I
June
buy it.
6th then, I think is when it comes out.
I think I do want
So
to buy it. I
it's
think
a
I will.
Here's what we should
Tuesday.
do. Here's
So
what we should
we've
do.
just got to take the day off.
I was gonna say on launch day we should all take the day off and let's stream it for like 6 hours or whatever, and we'll just we'll set like goals, and the longer
I'll
we
be
play, the
honest with
longer
you,
we'll
I
go.
don't know if I want my first experience with that game to be on stream because I want to enjoy the cutscenes. But
Maybe.
if you two can shut up while all the cutscenes are on, then I'm fine with
Oh,
that.
I'm good
I
for that.
don't talk. When have you ever
I'm
known me
no,
to be
I'm
a
good for that.
person that
I
talks?
don't. I would rather not talk over the cutscenes too. So
Yeah,
let's commit to
yeah,
that.
I wanna get the
That's
full
fine. Yeah, I
experience.
can do that then.
We're in. We're in. We're gonna do it. We're locked in, everybody.
Because I'm excited for the lore of this game. As I said on the Flip Screen Games podcast this week, it's a Diablo game.
Yeah,
There's some shit in here that's like Diablo.
I'm genuinely interested in it too. So I'm with you. What we could do, we could also roll new characters. Like we could roll characters that we only play together, and then we could all have our
That would be good because I feel like we'd need to have a good team. You know, one of you's got
yeah.
to be a tank, unfortunately, and I think I feel like of the two of you, if I was going to say one of you plays a tank, I'd say it was Max, but I don't know why.
Yeah.
because you look at a burly boy like myself.
He's such a pillar of masculinity.
Oh
When you
yeah,
look at him, you're
yeah,
like,
yeah,
of
yeah,
course,
yeah.
it must be. Yeah, I mean,
I'll punch, I'll rage.
I don't mind a tank. Like there are certain games where I'll play a tank, but usually I'm more of like a DPS kind of guy.
Mm, I like the magic in Diablo. It's great. I can't wait to play the Necromancer
Or
this weekend.
support, I guess. I
Just
like
I'm
playing
itching
support
for
too.
it.
I was a
The
big monk
Necromancer
guy.
is very appealing, I think. I feel like that might be the one I go for.
In D&D, I've only ever played warlocks, and I do often like we're starting a new campaign sort of towards the end of this year, and I know I want to go for like a fighter. I want to be a monk. I want to go in and just start going. Pa, 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 pa.
Yeah,
So yeah, maybe that will play into Diablo here.
there you go. All right, any final thoughts on Diablo 4 here, Steve?
No, I know some people, and it's just a word of warning, I guess, got banned by Blizzard, I think probably mistakenly, playing Overwatch 2 on Steam Deck.
Oh,
Um, I've not heard anyone I know personally being banned. I know Max has played Overwatch 2 on Steam Deck, but
never been
I think
banned.
sometimes the anti-cheat can be a bit overzealous. I think with Diablo, it's less of an issue because it's not PvP.
Hmm.
It's all PvE. So I don't think that there will be an issue here. But it's something worth noting that they did ban some players on Linux apparently. But I've tried installing through bottles and manually, and also with Lutris. I successfully installed all three ways because I was working on a video. But there's no point because it's literally a one-click install. Just go on Lutris, search for Diablo, and click install, and that's it. That's all you need to do.
I wonder if I'll run into the issue I had last time I tried to use Lutris, where because I have a second account on my Steam Deck, that it might because it wouldn't add to the game because I think it was trying to add it to both accounts and it was like
Mm,
and I
Use
could
Boiler
never
to
get.
add the game.
Yeah, that's what I'll try this time because that's what you mentioned earlier. So, yeah, I'll give this a go in a second. I'm actually just trying to boot into the BIOS now so I can do that thing. But I'll give the download a go and
Yeah, I'll put a link to both the install script on the Lutris website. So if there's any confusion, you can just click that and click install, and it will open up in Lutris. And I'll also put a link to Boiler. And if you have not heard of Boiler, Boiler is a really great little bit of software. It's similar to the Steam ROM manager that comes with EmuDeck, but rather than just for emulated games, it works for games from all marketplaces. So you can import from Lutris, from Bottles, from Heroic Launcher, manually from GOG. You can add games manually, and it will do the work to go download the artwork for you from the Steam Grid database and then add it directly to Steam for you. Really, really nice way of doing it. If you've got games in different places, like I have, it's super simple way of just getting those into gaming mode with nice artwork. And then if you don't like the artwork it gives you, there's an option to change it there. But there's also a Decky plugin, official Decky plugin now from the Steam Grid DB people. So go download that as well, and you can just change all the artwork yourself in gaming mode.
very nice. So again, if you want to hear more conversation about Diablo 4, remember you can go check out this week's episode of the Flip Screen Games podcast, where Steve gave a full breakdown of his time with the beta thus far, and we get into all the nitty gritty of the mechanics and kind of comparing it to some of the past Diablos and all that stuff. So if you are interested in hearing more from Steve on the game, and if it's for you, go check it out. So we've got a lot more to talk about on this week's show, including news that Counter-Strike 2 is real and it's coming. And unfortunately, maybe only on Windows. So we're going to talk about that. I'm sure Steve's already cooking on a solution for us. So don't you worry about that. But before we get into that, let me remind you that this week's episode of the Steam Deck podcast is brought to you by our Patreon producers for the month of March. They are, of course, Arnold J. Rimmer, Christopher Valenz, Earth Visitor, Gabriel Hasselmeyer, aka Sobi, Snackago, Ty the Dude, and Wakahula. Thank you all so much for your support over on patreon.com/flipscreengames. Y'all are the reals to the real, and we greatly appreciate your support of this and all of our sister shows. Remember, if you want to become a Patreon producer or supporter, just like they did, get your name right on the air, get the show early, get a bunch of other good perks and goodies, you can head over to flipscreen.games. That's our website where you will find links to all the places that you can get involved all across the entire Flip Screen Games community. If you want to write into the show, you want to come join the Discord where the conversation keeps rolling between episodes, you want to go check out some of our sister shows like the Flip Screen Games podcast, you will find links to all of that and much more over there on flipscreen.games. However you choose to get involved, thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Steam Deck podcast. So Counter-Strike 2, it was rumored a week or two ago, right? It almost made it to the show and we ended up getting to talk about it. And then now, of course, we have the confirmation that it is in fact here. It is real. Well, not here yet, but it's imminent. How do we feel about this?
When's the last time Valve released a game?
Half-Life
I
Alyx was the
Yeah,
last
Half-Life
title.
Yeah,
Alyx.
okay, that's a good point. Yeah. So
Which is
okay.
interesting because this uses a lot of Half-Life Alyx elements. They've taken the same engine that they used for Half-Life Alyx. They brought over even some of the physics stuff from Half-Life Alyx. There's this section where they show on the website where they show the Molotov cocktail, and now it's in the high def visual effects section. The Molotov cocktail has actual water physics, so you can see water
Just like,
splashing around in the Molotov cocktail,
is
which
it
is
they did it a trick
excessive.
way in Half-Life Alyx? It was a trick, right? When you looked into it, there was nothing there. It was like a moving texture on the outside. Is it the same
My
thing,
guess is
or
it
is
would
it
be
actually
the
water?
same thing. Counter-Strike's interesting because it's one of those games where you see the real pro players, they come in and they just turn everything off, and I wonder
Turn
if
it down to low.
yeah, they turn it down to low, they don't give a shit about the lighting or the textures or anything like that. So it's a really interesting game that they've gone ahead and put the effort into
Mhm.
revamping every single level, the lighting, completely new physics rendering system with like fancy reflections and stuff to bring CS:GO into a modern game. And it makes me wonder if this is potentially a sign of more remasters to come. Like, do we finally get an official Half-Life remake? Do we get a Half-Life 2 remaster poured into the same engine as Half-Life Alyx? Is there a Half-Life 3 on the way? I don't know about you two. I just couldn't give a shit about Counter-Strike, unfortunately. I do not play this kind of game.
I think of all of the Valve games, I think this is probably the one I care about the least. I'll give it a go. But yeah, I think when you can think about your Portals, you think about your Left 4 Deads, you think about your Team Fortress 2s or whatever. You know, these are all games that I'd be like, oh yeah, I definitely get back into those. Counter Strike doesn't. I think it's too sweaty, it's too competitive, and if that's if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. Generally speaking, I'm not a big first person shooter guy. Like not like this kind anyway, right? Like obviously, Steve and I have historically been fans of like Far Cry. I am a big fan of Halo, but even that, right? It's like I am more into the single player, like story driven first person shooter, or the like if it is a multiplayer thing, it has a more like not necessarily casual, but like a gimmick, right? Like Halo's got like the insane gravity and it's a high sci-fi setting and all that kind of stuff. I'm not usually into the, sweaty, as you put it, Max, kind of like tactical, combat shooters like that.
Yeah, like you have to as soon as you spot a guy, you have to be shooting at him because you're dead. If not, like that's never been. I had my fun with PUBG, for example, but it very much became like, oh, that guy spotted me first, so I lose. And I think uh, Counter Strike is that on a much smaller scale. It doesn't have all the bits I did like, which is like exploring around, finding the little guns. Oh, could that be a
It's
guy over
traditional
there?
death matches, right? Isn't
Hmm.
it?
Yes, but I
In
think
like smaller maps.
there's other things too. I think you have to like capture certain areas, or you have to plant bombs in certain places.
I think, yeah, there are
Plant all the
different
bombs
game
and
modes.
win. Yeah, I think the one I'm
Okay.
most familiar with is you have to be the terrorist planting bombs, or you have to be the other guys killing all the terrorists first.
But what I mean is it's not like a big sprawling map like
Oh no,
PUBG
sorry, no, it's
or
not.
Fortnite. It's a tiny little contained area that we're all moving around
Yes,
and
yeah.
finding the enemies. I mean, that's fair. I might give it a go. I probably
Mm.
won't, and the reason I won't is because this limited test is not coming to Linux or Mac OS, which means it's not going to be available on Steam Deck, which is kind of strange to me because it's
Very
like
strange.
you don't want this on your premium handheld device that
I
you're kind of
I
touting as this is the kind of the new hotness that
Yeah.
everyone should be using?
I would imagine it's probably limited to the test fire, right? Because I imagine that it is easier to do the test on one platform
Yeah,
than on 2.
that would be my guess, and it also takes out the factor of if they don't have a native Linux version, is the issue with Counter-Strike 2, or is the issue with Proton, and Proton kind of doing some kind of weirdness between it, like we saw with Diablo, where it says there's no GPUs found, right? Um, so I guess it takes that element out. But I thought, and I'm just going to double check that CS:GO had a native Linux version, and it does. It has a native Linux and Mac version.
Did
So I
that
would
come at
imagine.
launch though?
I think it probably did because it was 2012, so that would have been around the time of the original SteamOS and Steam machines, and then probably pushing that as like one of the games that you could play with. They call it Steam Play, right? Um, so I would
You're talking
imagine
about CS:GO, right?
I would imagine you're probably right that at launch of Counter Strike 2, we're probably going to get a Steam Deck version.
We've been saying a lot and always have said, "Oh, well, whatever Valve does, they're gonna focus on the Steam Deck. They're gonna make sure their games are front and center on Steam Deck, their own system, and that'd be quite exciting." But it is interesting to see that they're not
Yeah,
focusing on the Steam Deck for this test launch. It wouldn't be fair to focus on the Steam Deck, but to not have, like, decided, "Okay, cool, maybe we actually have the test file a little bit later with the Steam Deck available," because it's just a huge amount of your
So,
audience.
here's what I got. The game was released on, OS X, right, which is the Apple, that's Mac OS,
Mhm.
hmm
PlayStation 3, Windows, and Xbox 360 in August 2012, and then it came to Linux 2 years later in 2014.
Oh shit! It actually came to console as well. That's crazy.
Uh-huh, at launch. So, I would imagine, um, it's the reason that we talked about, right, in the past, where Linux currently is a niche, right? It's a niche platform for sure for gaming, and it's one that I think is getting stronger, and Valve is, I think, um, trying to get behind it, right, with the Steam OS, and we have the native version of that launching later this year, or seemingly anyway, right? I wouldn't be surprised if the goal here, right, is like you test on Windows because that's where you have the largest number of players to do stress testing and to identify the rough patches and the things that you need to work on for balance and all that stuff. So you want to focus on having one dedicated focused launch on one platform so that you can get the data you need to make the necessary adjustments to get the game across the bow, right? And I think once you have that stable version going, I imagine that getting a Steam Deck version either at launch or very shortly after launch is probably the plan.
That would be my guess. I also think maybe it's based on um, where esports players are playing. Right, they're playing on Windows. They're not playing on Linux.
Right. The
And it says
community is
that
there.
yeah, and the test is a limited test that Valve invites you to, based on a number of factors, apparently, including but not limited to recent playtime on official servers, trust factors, and Steam account standing. But I would imagine that they'll also look at, oh, this person's on this esports team, so we're going to make sure that they get an invite so we can see them streaming it on Twitch or whatever when it comes out.
So none of us are getting invites then. Quite
No,
I
yeah,
guess
well,
not.
people who've never played the game, yeah, I don't
yeah.
think so.
I will say, just to put a pin in it, I guess, the fact that the original game launched on Mac and that this test fire is not available, or I keep calling it a test fire. That's from Splatoon. Um,
It's Splatoon, yeah.
this limited test is only happening on Windows, is probably not. It doesn't necessarily equate to cause for concern.
Yeah, I also don't think this is getting a Mac release because most games on Steam don't get a Mac release anymore. Apple's transition to their own silicon. It's a pain in the ass to support it. So games just don't. They don't support OpenGL. They don't support Vulkan. why would Valve put the effort in to launch it there? That would be a really, really niche release, like ridiculously niche release. Who's playing Counter Strike 2 on Mac? If you're playing Counter Strike Go, if you're playing CS:GO on your Mac, please leave a comment down
With
below because
a
I want to know who you are, the one person in the world that
and
plays CS:GO on Mac.
I wanna know if you're using a magic mouse or not as well.
Yeah, the one with no scroll wheel, yeah, and the
Yeah,
one button. Are you using
yeah.
that, or are you using a touchpad
Oh,
on your
yeah.
MacBook?
Wow.
I will say, even though we're not CS:GO guys, this is pretty cool. It's exciting to see Valve put out another game. Few and far between these days.
Really exciting to see, and like I said, I also think it's nice to see light for other game franchises from them that I actually care about. Obviously, we know that they've got some other games in development based on some patents that or sort of trademarks that they put through. But I really want to see like an updated Portal to bring
I
it
got
up
3 words
to
for you, Steve.
stuff.
Team Fortress 3. Let's go.
Yeah, maybe. I don't think they need another one. I think this is their like esportsy arena game. I don't think Team Fortress comes back and takes on Overwatch at this point. Do people care about that enough for them to
I
make
would
that a
Oh, I think
success?
they do.
well,
Team
everyone that
Fortress
I
was
knew that
such a thing,
yeah, but everyone I know that played Team Fortress 2 now just plays Overwatch,
right?
and has no interest to go back to Team Fortress.
Yeah, they don't have any interest to go back to Team Fortress 2 because it's 100 years old. If they came
Okay.
out with a Team Fortress 3 and it was, that same, core gameplay loop and, the stuff that, that people really identified with back in the day, but it was a new, fresh version that felt modern and that, didn't feel like you were booting up a game that came out in like 2009, 8? I can't even remember now. Might even be a little earlier than that. But either way, I think that game would get a pop, and I think it could come back and be relevant if it was hot. Maybe not. Maybe I'm overestimating it, and it would have had a Back for Blood situation where everyone's like, "Yes, let more Left for Dead," and then it's like, it's just more Left for Dead. I
Yeah.
mean,
Well, I
do
mean,
we need
didn't
that?
someone say that the initial leak that, the files that were found that sort of leaked CS:GO sorry, Counter Strike 2 also had some Left 4 Dead 3 stuff in there too? Am I right in saying that?
Let's
I'm not
go. I mean,
sure on
I'd be
that, but
excited.
data miners have got to work. It looks like Counter Strike 2 might be coming to mobile as well. So it
Ooh.
looks like this might be Valve's kind of next big play to take on kind of the free to play market and
They
maybe
want that Call of Duty money.
take down Epic Games once again.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I think they either want the Call of Duty money or they want the Fortnite money, right? That's what people that's what people are playing these days. They're playing free to play shooters, and Counter Strike kind of lost a little bit of its thunder when PUBG came out and then Fortnite came out. I know this is really a
I feel
different
like
kind of game.
I think CS:GO it was less those games, I think, than it was Valorant. Like, Valorant
Yeah.
did it did the Overwatch thing, right? Where, like, it came out and was like, "Oh, it's like this, but new." And it's like, "Oh, okay." And they obviously it has the kinda, like, hero element that, you associate with an Overwatch or League of Legends or whatever, which I think also helps, right? Like, that's something that, has proven, I think, to help grow a game like that. And I mean, that was like TF2's whole thing, right? It was like the different classes, and they had the comics and the little short FMVs and everything, and that was a huge part of building. I think you know um, the conversation around that game.
I played a tiny bit of Team Fortress when it was in the orange box, but that was it. Other than that, I played nothing.
I had a
And the
real
orange
big.
box was such a good deal, like the
It
best
really
deal in
was.
gaming back then. It was so good.
I had a big period with TF2. Like when it was already old and then when it was very old. I got back into it for a while and was like doing private servers and playing like prop hunt and all that stuff, and such a fun time. Such a fun time. Oh,
You're
Max, you're
muted,
muted.
Max.
Of
What'd you do to yourself?
course I am. I played a lot of TF2 when it was the whole Meet the series was coming out, and I think we were all waiting for Meet the who was the fire guy? What's his name?
The pyro.
Meet the Pyro. Yeah, we were all waiting for waiting for that, and that's when I was playing TF2. It must have been like 2012. I wanna say 2011, maybe
Yeah,
2012?
that was
Around
the
then,
first time
that's
I
when I
got
was
into it.
playing.
Yeah,
Let me just see what
good
year Meet the
times.
Pyro happened, because I was definitely playing when that happened. 2012. So there we go.
Look, you were right there. You got it. Yeah. I one of my favorite. I would love to find the video, so I can post it because I think people would get a kick out of it. But one of my favorite cosplay shoots I ever did when I was at New York Comic Con was there was a group of guys who dressed as all of the Team Fortress 2 characters, and they had a bunch of picket signs, and they were like protesting the Overwatch characters for being like scabs who took their jobs, of like you know, taking their whole bit, which I thought was very funny. All right. So, Steve, you have a PSA for the folks.
Yeah, so if you updated to stable this week, if you've been on stable and you use Decky, you will have noticed a bunch of plugins were broken and then got removed from the Decky plugin store because the project owners over there made sure that these plugins weren't broken and just took them off the store. My plugins were one of them. Animation Changer and Tunnel Deck both got broken. I have since fixed them. So Tunnel Deck is back up and working. Animation Changes there as well. Um, Tunnel Deck was also having issues with the latest version of SteamOS. That's also been fixed. So if you were using that, if you use VPNs on your Steam Deck, go check out Tunnel Deck and you can re-download it. And there's also a bunch of new plugins that got approved as with digging through the store and seeing what's there.
Very nice. All right, and then you teased this one earlier on. The Steam Deck refresh rate unlocker.
Yeah, so I was digging around,
Give us
right?
the laydown.
I don't know if you two know much about screens. I would imagine Max more so than you, Pete, and not for any other reason than he's a PC gamer.
Oh,
But
my superiority recognized. Finally.
Yeah,
um,
superiority. Sure, that's what it is.
but
I
it's
don't want
the
to make a joke
concept.
about never having sex before, but I don't know.
But it's the concept of overclocking a display. Have either of you ever overclocked a display?
Never.
No,
Well,
I
apparently
know.
you can overclock displays, right?
Yeah,
And so the Steam Deck is no different to that because as a PC, you can overclock the display if you want. So there's this little app that was created over on GitHub that I'll link to. And it's called Steam Deck Refresh Rate Unlocker. And it is a script that will allow you to use up to 70 hertz refresh rate for the display. So you know how when you select the slider for the refresh rate, you can go from 40 hertz up to 60 hertz. This will let you do 30 hertz up to 70 hertz. So you can go all the way down to 30 if you want to, and all the way up to 70 if you want to. Um, you can so it'll underclock and overclock if you want it to. This is a proof of concept at the moment. I've not tried it. I have no idea if it will break anything. So be warned if you want to try this. But it's
so real quick,
interesting to me.
I'm sharing the screen for the the folks over on YouTube, and I love. There's a disclaimer at the top, and there's two bullets on it. It says number one, do this at your own risk. Number two, this is for educational and research purposes only. So yeah, definitely, definitely. It's we're at the very very precipice of this experiment, so be careful.
Yeah, but it's so interesting to me that this is a possibility that the operating system allows it, that the Steam UI has the ability for it to go above 60 hertz if you want it to. And I just thought it was really cool. But for me, I don't understand the use case. At what point does 60 hertz feel like not enough that I've got to go for 70? The 70 frames per second really feel that much smoother? Because
So
I
let
can't
me
see that it's going to feel that much smoother.
No, I think this is just maybe what they're capable of doing right now, personally.
no let me ask a question as a novice over here on this subject. You brought up the FPS there in the intro to this. The creator makes a distinction between those two things, right? And says this repository contains the instructions and script on how to unlock the Steam Deck under SteamOS to use up to 70 hertz refresh rate for the display. Do not confuse this with FPS. So, Steve, you just brought up the 70 FPS there.
Yeah.
For the listeners who may not be up to date there, explain the relationship between the refresh rate and your FPS.
So the refresh rate is what the screen's refreshing at. So it's doing a scan that many times per second, right? 70 times per second if it's 70 hertz. And the frames is the number of frames that the game is outputting per second. So FPS is frames per second. So if it's doing 70 FPS, it's drawing 70 times to the screen every second. So what you want to try and do is match them up. That's why when you get your game running at 40 FPS, you want to make sure that the slider of the refresh rate is set to 40 hertz. So for every time it's painting a frame, the screen is refreshing in sync. If it's out of sync, you'll feel a stutter, it'll feel weird, it won't feel right, it'll feel off. So if you want your game to run at 70 FPS, you need your screen to run at 70 hertz. Otherwise, it could be running at 70 FPS, but if your screen's only refreshing 60 times per second, it's not going to make a difference. You're not going to see the difference. So really, again, I can't see a need for this. It's interesting that it's a possibility. It's cool that you can underclock and overclock. I would love to see this built into the OS for externals displays. I'm still waiting for VRR. I'm sorry, Valve, that I keep bringing up VRR, and I will shut up when you give it to me. I promise. But I really want to be able to set the refresh rate to whatever I want it to be, not just 60 or 120 or whatever it is in the settings of the console of the Steam Deck itself. Like when you connect to a display, you can set I want this to run at 1440p at 120, or I want this to run at 4K at 60 or 1080p at 60. That's the only place you can really set it. There is a control in the developer options if you enable it to bring this refresh rate slider back. It's completely broken, as I said in our Steam Deck dock review video. It's been broken since then. They've not once tried to fix it. It's not priority for them, pretty clearly. So if once again the community can do something like this, where the refresh rate limit can be set to 70, it gives me hope that potentially this can be done for external displays as well.
Yeah, I mean, it would be really nice if it would be this simple to have, a toggle that got like, like when you plug it in, it just expands, right? And you have like a longer, or you could set a preset for either, whether it's in docked or whatever. I think that's a big part of what we've been asking for is like having the Steam Deck have this ability to kind of immediately understand that it's in docked mode and unlock new features, right? To take advantage of the display that you're connected to a little bit more.
Yeah, I think I want the games to not default to 16 by 10 and have those expand out. And I want to be able to set the refresh rate to whatever I want. Because if you've got a 120 hertz display, 40 is one of the options that should be available to you because it's a third of 120. So the reason we did 30 and 60 was because 30 was half of 60. And 40 is in that range for 60 hertz panels as well. But 40 is this kind of sweet spot for a 120 hertz display. If you can't hit 60, 40 feels good enough. It's why we saw games on PlayStation offering 40 hertz mode, 40 frames per second modes, like Ratchet and Clank did, Spider-Man did. I don't know if God of War had the option, but a bunch of games were offering, say, you can have full performance mode with no ray tracing, or you can have this 40 hertz mode well, we'll only run at 40 frames per second, but you get full ray tracing, and it's like a quality mode that we can only get to 40 frames per second. And that's always felt enough for me. 40 hertz feels like a really good compromise between 30 FPS and 60 FPS. It feels a lot smoother, and I don't have to really worry about performance as much as trying to hit that sweet 60 spot.
Oh, I'd still rather 60 most of the time. I've tried running games at 40, I'm like, it just feels like 30. Like there's not enough of a difference. But I'm sure once you get this sort of, if I really give it a chance, um, I would just get over it,
I think if you go from seeing it in 30 to then seeing it in 40, the difference is easily seen. But if you go from 60 down to 40, not so much. It's like when you go from playing a 60 frames per second game and then you go over to something that's running at 30, you're like, why is this so stuttery and like
Mhm.
jerky and weird looking? And it's because your brain's been used to seeing 60 frames per second.
And my brain loves 60 frames per second, let me tell you.
I know my brain loves 60 frames per second too, but the Steam Deck does not like outputting 60 frames per second for some games.
Yeah.
Steam Deck 2 when?
Yeah, but like that's what I mean though, right? So why would I ever need 70? Why would I ever need 70 frames per second? This is very much is a research project, but I wanted to highlight it anyway because I thought it was such an interesting, cool little thing. And the fact that it's possible, I think, is really cool.
Yeah, and I mean this is the fun of reporting on the Steam Deck, I think, is like just seeing all the wild things that people in the community figure out you can do,
Hmm.
and then kind of seeing what happens. And God bless the folks willing to risk bricking their Steam Decks to figure this out for us. You guys are the ones out there doing God's work, and we appreciate you. Steve, excuse me, I include you among those
Steam.
people. Steam.
Yeah,
Steam Deck
I
Steve, that's what we
almost-
call him.
I almost did. And then I ended up having to like make an image, a recovery image.
Oh, no
'Cause
way.
when I was making Tunnel Deck, I accidentally set every single file to root, so it couldn't read anything, and so the operating system couldn't even write anything itself, which was not great, not so great. So I had to boot into recovery and delete the offending file. But it's usually you can come back from a brick on a PC. It's no problem.
And we learned the hard way that you can come back from a brick on a Steam Deck too, so that's pretty good. You should make a video about that, honestly, about how to do it if
Well, on the
if you
recovery
find
image,
yourself in that
yeah, it's scary because it takes so long for it to boot into the recovery image too. You're like, is this thing working? Is this ever gonna come on?
I think you should do it. People could probably use the reassurance,
Well, I've intentionally just bricked my Steam Deck. Here's how you can recover it.
Here's how you can brick your Steam Deck.
Yeah, here's a cool prank you can play on Pete when you go visit.
No.
Simply plug this. Do you know you could do that? You could get like a USB that you could plug into a computer and it would just like break
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Send a
Yeah.
shock
It would
through
just
it.
like kill the USB port. But you can also
I mean,
I could just also put a script online somewhere that would just completely brick your deck if you just run it in the terminal. That is pretty scary to think that you need to be wary of where you're downloading these files from and whether the source is trustworthy because it
only
could be
download
something
our
nefarious.
files. Steve tested, Steve approved. But see, here's the thing, Steve. The real joke would be on you if you played that prank on me, because then I would just come to you and be like, Steve, my Steam Deck is broken. I need you to fix it.
I was like, I have no idea.
That's
Don't
what
know.
I
I've
do.
never ever done this before. What are you on about?
Don't even play. The only reason we even have tutorials is because I was like, it sure would be cool if you could do this thing. Like, you'll do it. You'll figure it out.
Yeah, yeah. I remember you just being like, yeah, I would really love to play this in bed, and I like Spider-Man in bed, and I'm like, yeah, I'm fairly sure you can just stream to it, and you've still not tried it, not once.
No, I haven't. Hey, but thousands of people have. So you guys all benefited from my desire. So, we all won. Anyway, thank you guys for joining us here on another episode of the Steve Deck Podcast. If you want to let us know what you think about any of the stuff we talked about today, remember, there's a bunch of ways you can get in touch. Hit us up at questions@flipscreen.games. Come and join the Discord where the conversation keeps rolling between episodes, or come hit us up on social media. However you want to get in touch, there's a bunch of ways you can do it, and you can find links to all that and much more over on flipscreen.games, our website, where you can find our Patreon, our other shows, our Discord, all the places that you might want to go in the community. There's links to them over there. However you choose to get involved, show your support, or become a member of the community, we truly thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Steam Deck Podcast. For the crew, I've been Pete. Did it again. I did it again, Max. I've been Pete. He's been Steve. And then all the way over there has been Max. All right, we'll see you next week, baby.
Bye.